the Department of English feels honored to organize this important two-day national seminar on feminist historiography. As is obvious from the title, Feminist Historiography aims to retrieve the voices of women in history that have been suppressed and marginalized for long. Challenging the erasure of women from history, feminist historiography opens a new way to understand the past. And keenly aware of the ideological nature of all forms of writing, including historical writing, it seeks to foreground the question of gender and women-centric issues in the discourse of historical writing. In the recent years, a number of scholars have drawn attention to how patriarchy, capitalism, racism, and other such ideologies shape our perception of women and how such perception can be combated. Feminist historiography plays an important role in bringing out the gaps in the dominant trends in history writing. It is interested not only in countering the male-centric discourses that have traditionally ignored or distorted women's history, it also engages critically with the questions of power, perspective, agency, and interpretation. Over the next 2 days, we will listen to the scholars on various themes related to this topic. To shed further light on the issue, I now request Professor Ifat Maqbool, Head Department of English, to deliver the welcome address.
It is my pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished guests, Professor Urvashi Butalia, Professor Janaki Nair, Professor T.N. Dhar, Professor Nishad Zaidi, Professor Simi Malhotra, esteemed faculty members from universities and colleges around the country, academicians and research scholars from other universities. Dear colleagues at the Department of English, research scholars, and dear students, thank you all for being here with us today. It is my pleasure to host you today for this inaugural session, and we are delighted to conclude this academic session with a national seminar. In our long and sustained history as one of the oldest departments on campus, we at the Department of English endeavor to uphold and maintain the legacy of academic excellence bequeathed to us. This includes building on the achievements of the past while being ready to meet the challenges of a rapidly transforming academic landscape. Guided by these goals, we strive towards creating a vibrant community of students and research scholars, prioritizing their professional as well as personal enhancement. Teaching and research are our core strengths, and we aim to impart rigorous scholarship, critical thinking, and a humane worldview in our student community. Over the years, we have strived to maintain academic standards by regular upgradation of our teaching and research programs, and today the department offers a range of courses that cater to the increasing need for interdisciplinarity and inclusivity. Our research is similarly guided by a trajectory aimed at the promotion of critical scholarship, a multidisciplinary approach, and an active engagement with current debates in the humanities and English studies. I'm pleased to state that our research scholars are working on diverse and contemporary areas in English and culture studies. Our faculty is also deeply invested in teaching and research and are consistently engaged in upgrading their professional capacities.
Department of English, one of the premier departments of University of Kashmir, established in the beginning, has seen a very glorious past, faced many challenges, moved ahead as the university moved, and I'm happy to say that, very good research work is being conducted over there, and even pertaining to the women's studies, gender studies, I keep on seeing when the topics comes to me for the authorization. And indeed, pertaining to gender issues, they remain very much, concerned, and different activities they keep on organizing. And, what both the learned speakers said, definitely we need to see our past, we need to see our present, we need to see what our future can be, how women can play a role, what women can play a role right now and in the past, what has been done, what are the writings. Recently, I saw a book of Shehla Rashid, where she has, quoted Muslim women, what's their, how they have worked towards the development of their country. So, these types of things we really need to bring to the public, and public should know it, how women are, not only Muslim women, even others, how they are contributing. I'm sure the young boys and girls sitting out over here, if they can pen down something in the form of a research paper, in the form of a book, in the form of a project. I'm sure even if we ask for the project grant, we can get a good amount for projects also. And these types of seminars, these types of workshops, I think Department of English can very well organize and very well take up. And I'm sure, as I said, at the end of the seminar, 2-day seminar, get out with some documentation so that it's useful for us, it's useful for you, and it's also useful at the national level so that we can circulate it.
If we acknowledge that women are simultaneously fundamental to and also most marginal to human existence, then what kinds of questions should the feminist historian frame? What methodological virtues are derived from thinking of femininity and indeed the category of woman herself as constructions? The project of modernizing women, making them companions in marriage, and yet stopping short of giving them equal rights, has provided historians with an embarrassment of riches. Beginning in the 19th century, there was a huge outpouring of literature, many of you will be familiar with this, related to the building of character among women, married or unmarried, and the kinds of forces that they should be protected from, or the kinds of influences that they should be brought under. Didactic literature written by religious leaders, nationalists, reformers of various kinds, usually, but not always male, prepared women for the new modern world and their place in it. How to manage the household, how to cook, how to dress, conduct yourself in private and public, tons of advice manuals on how to behave. And these were emerging out of the anxieties of possible ways in which women would actually deal with their encounter with modernity.
So we can talk at length about what feminist historiography is, and Janaki has already outlined quite a few ideas there, and I'm sure that you will do that in the seminar. But I want here to first tell you a story about my experiments with bringing what I see as feminist historiography to my students. As it was mentioned that I've been teaching a course at Ashoka University, and my course is called Women's Society and Changing India. And I begin the course with a presentation called The Search for Women in History. And the question that I put to my students is, how do we trace something that is basically an absence? What sort of materials do we look at? Will the existing so-called reliable sources of history suffice, or is there something deeply lacking in them? What are the tools that we bring to this search? What are the methodologies? How do we find women whose histories don't exist at all? And I ask my students to consider things that would not normally be considered legitimate as historical sources. Poetry, letters, clothing, photographs, posters, and much more as sources of women's history. For example, one of the things I show them is a scene from a Bollywood movie in which there are two people, a man and a woman pretending to be a man. Both of them are wearing a uniform, and it's a uniform that is worn by, you will recognize this, that used to be worn by and still worn by what we call class 4 employees in Sarkari offices. Usually the trousers, the kind of bush shirt, and in the old days, what was called a Gandhi topi, but now not that. And that uniform has a history. And the history is that in the post-partition years, when many, many women were widowed and refugees flowed in, and many women were single women, the government put together a rehabilitation program for them, which was imagined as a program teaching women to stitch. So there were master tailors who cut the things, and then the women were given these assignments to stitch. And what they stitched was all the uniforms for all the class 4 employees in the government offices, which is what became a form of their rehabilitation. So when you're seeking women's history, even a uniform of a class 4 employee can lead you to history which you might not otherwise be aware of. So that's what I talk to my students about. And these are rich sources, but they're also problematic. And more, they are sporadic, fragmentary, not consistent. So what does this mean in the search for women's history? To my mind, it means fighting on multiple fronts. First, on trying to turn an absence into a presence, and therefore arguing that even fragments that provide us clues to what women's lives may have been like have a value in the face of that absence and in the absence of such information in all other available sources. Then doing this through unconventional sources and fighting for the legitimacy of those sources. So for example, if you look at the Therigatha, the poems of Buddhist nuns from the 6th century BC, there are only 73 poems, they're really short, but in the absence of any other information about women's lives, these poems provide us a window into the lives of women.